Kitchen. Tonight we're making orange juice Dijon glazed pork chops along with a side of risotto. Okay, so what are we going to need for this meal? Well, for the pork chops, we're going to need 1 pork rib chop for each person you're feeding. Now, these pork rib chops differ from a pork loin chop in that these are more like a bone-in ribeye versus a pork loin chop, which is more like a T-bone or a porterhouse. We're also going to need 2 cups of orange juice, and I like the pulp-free, but you can use whatever you like. This is 2 to 3 tablespoons of Dijon mustard and about a tablespoon of dried tarragon. So that's for the pork chop. For the risotto, it's very simple. We just need 1½ cups of arborio rice, 4 cups of a good quality chicken stock, your homemade is fine too, 1 thinly sliced onion, a half of a cup of dry sherry, a teaspoon of kosher salt, and we're going to need some fresh cracked black pepper. Now, both of these are going to have to cook over at the stove at the same time, so let's get that over there and get started. Okay, so we've got to have all this on our stovetop, and we are probably going to be a little bit cramped for space, but if you're cooking along at home, at least you won't have the added headache of trying to figure out where your cameraman fits in this setup. Alright, so we need to start with our risotto first. So we've got our half of a stick of butter melting in our risotto pan, and I've got all 4 cups of chicken stock heating up in this little saucepan. This needs to be hot when it goes into the risotto. This is where I'm going to be cooking the pork chops. I've got my largest skillet covered with a little bit of cooking spray. When this comes up to temperature, when all of this is translucent, we'll go ahead and put the pork chops in. Alright, so the butter is completely melted, and now I've got these onions in here. Now we're going to let these soften up and become translucent, and my pan is ready to go. That's nice and hot. Alright, these onions have started to soften up a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and add in our spices, the salt and the pepper. Alright, and stir this up a little bit, and then it still needs to sweat down a little bit farther. These onions need a little bit of color on them before we put in the arborio rice. Okay, we also need to keep track of our pork chops so we know when to turn them. Now, we can check to see that they're cooking a little bit up the half of the pork chop so they'd be ready to turn. So I can see these have got a little bit of color, so I'm going to go ahead and turn them over. Okay, these onions have gotten fairly soft and they are starting to get a little bit of color. I don't want them too brown, so we're going to go ahead and add in the risotto. And we're going to go ahead and stir this a little bit, and then we're going to let it saute for just a little bit until it gets some color on it too. Okay, this risotto's got some very nice color on it, so we're going to go ahead and deglaze with our ½ cup of sherry. Alright, and I'm going to turn this down to about medium. And then once all the sherry's been absorbed or boiled away, we're going to go ahead and start adding our chicken stock in 1 cup at a time. So that'll be 2 ladles since this is a 4-ounce ladle. And we're going to stir this continuously until it absorbs, and then we're just going to add 1 cup at a time. Okay, this risotto is going to take about 45 minutes to put together, and that's good, because these pork chops have to cook, and then they're going to come out of the pan, and then I'm going to deglaze it with a ½ of a cup of sherry, which I forgot to mention at the beginning. Then we're going to build the sauce, and then these pork chops are going back in it, and then they can simmer for the rest of the time that it takes for the risotto to cook. Okay, that's almost all absorbed, so we'll go ahead with another cup. Okay, and then these pork chops look like they're about ready to come out. Let me give them a check. Yes, that looks nice. Okay, we don't have to worry about these having pink on them or not looking like they're done. They're going to be simmering in here for quite some time, so they'll be fine. Okay, we want to make sure that we scrape up any brown bits or any cooked bits on the bottom here that'll turn the sauce nicely browned and add excellent flavor. Alright, let me turn this back up to about medium-high. And we're going to let the sherry almost completely reduce away. Okay, this sherry is fairly well reduced, so we're going to go ahead and add the Dijon in. And I've switched over to a whisk because this is much easier to make this sauce with a whisk than it is with a wooden spoon or a spatula. Alright, so I've just whisked this in. We'll go ahead and add in the tarragon and then the orange juice. Alright, and then I'm just putting in the last cup. This is probably a little more than a cup. Alright, our sauce has started to simmer, so I'm going to go ahead and put the pork chops back in and let them simmer in this sauce while the risotto finishes cooking. I'm also going to pour in any liquid that's on this plate. Okay, this is simmering just a little too hard, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it down, probably to about medium. If it continues to simmer very hard, we'll still turn it down just a little bit farther. And I'll need to at least turn these pork chops over once during the simmering process. Okay, your risotto is done when nearly all of the liquid has been absorbed. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and it can just sit here and coast for the rest of the time that my pork chops are simmering and my vegetables are steaming for the rest of our dinner. Okay, let's give this risotto and these pork chops a taste. Now, I've got my son Ethan tasting with me because he absolutely loves risotto. Oh, that orange juice is so good with that pork.
It needs applesauce.